issue for that servant of the one talent wasn't that he lacked opportunity, he lacked initiative. He allowed fear of the outcome to keep him from executing on what he already had. Passivity is not just inactivity. It is the refusal to risk engagement. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Take Care and Live podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Stephen. As a performance coach, education expert, and conflict consultant, I help people recognize one powerful truth we often overlook, and that is that life runs on systems built through relationships and resources. And my role is to help you see those systems clearly, learn how to align them, and leverage them intentionally so you don't just manage through life, but you position yourself to thrive in every area of life. And that's why I'm continuing this series on interest versus enhancements, because the more you think you have no control over the environment around you, the more you will be willing to allow that environment to control how you respond to it. And today I'm going to give you 3 key actions, very simple actions you can take to overcome the paralyzing effects of passivity. We're going to focus on getting past passive. And there's an acronym that I have for being passive, or an acronym that I have for passive. And it's the pressure to assimilate while someone or something else intercepts your vision and execution. In the previous episode, I provided us with some very specific language we can use and communicate to anyone who is trying to pull us into an objective or a goal or an area of focus that is out of step with where we know we need to be giving the best of our time, our cognitive capacity, and our tangible resources. I also gave you a very brief example from my own life and how I had to reset and how I reset other people's expectations based on what I knew was my clear focus and commitment that I had made to lead an organization I was hired to lead, despite what they wanted me to do. That can create quite a conflict. But before I go any further, I want to clarify a few things. That this series on interest versus enhancements is not just about leading people in an organization or a team. I know, in fact, that people who listen to this podcast, and when I talk about ideas and elements of leadership, they don't really feel connected to being a leader, although they understand the principle. And that's the point, because it's really life principles. These are life principles. The principles that I'm giving you in today's session, in today's episode, are life principles because it all starts with us. If you're able to implement these strategies that I'm going to give you here, the resistance, it won't go away. The temptation to remain on the passive level of engagement won't go away either, but you will have created for yourself an environment to take action so that you move from being passive to experiencing the kind of life and momentum where you're investing the greatest asset that you have, your time, into what you can actually produce and move towards becoming an enhancement. You'll be able to apply these steps in relationship to yourself, to your family, and to anything that's uniquely important to you that you have a commitment, a desire to take action on. You'll be able to apply it, yes, in the workplace as well, where you're given the responsibility to manage a project independently or manage or influence or lead other people. So let's jump into it. Here are the 3 things you need to do to intercept and even disrupt the paralyzing effects of being passive. That is the pressure to assimilate while someone or something else intercepts your execution. The first thing is to set a specific target. You want to whittle down your attention to the one thing that you're going to commit and dedicate your time to accomplish. Don't focus on the whole picture. That will overwhelm you. It is overwhelming to try to figure out the whole picture. the whole goal. You have to break that into smaller chunks. It will overwhelm you and it will distract you if you try to think of the whole thing. Instead, think about the singular, narrow objective, the singular, narrow target that you want to focus on. So, for example, my objective was to publish this episode, but my initial target could not be to obsess over publishing the episode. My initial most important target was to sit down and draft my talking points, be clear about what I was going to focus on and what I was going to unpack in the episode. That was the singular specific target I needed to whittle it down to. And so my first call of duty was to create my outline, identifying what I was going to talk about, draft the outline or the script for this conversation, and then be clear about what it is I wanted to take to the publication phase. If I had overwhelmed myself with publishing the episode, my failure to get the episode published would have created a heightened level of anxiety and even frustrated my prefrontal cortex and kept me down at the passive level. I would have thrown in the towel because I didn't get the deadline of publishing when I wanted to, as opposed to really focusing on the meat and potatoes, and that is clarifying the message and purpose for what it is I was going to publish. And the result of me not having met the deadline or publishing it, if that being the primary thing I focused on, would have kept me from delivering on my core actions. It would have kept me from giving the best to the initial singular specific target that needed to get my attention. And so often we get trapped by focusing on the bigger picture, not chunking it into smaller parts. This is a common challenge for high performers who see a big task, a big problem that needs to get solved, and their immediate step is to want to figure out the entire thing all at once, rather than break it up into smaller pieces to identify what they need to attack first to make their use of time, their cognitive capacity, and their tangible resources the most effective and the most useful for what it is that needs to get accomplished. High performers typically focus on multiple streams and details at once, but they can't commit their energies to them all at once. Nobody can. You've got to whittle it down to a singular piece at a time that you can maximize. So the first thing you want to do is be specific. You want to get past passive, be specific about your target. Big vision is executed in small pieces at a time. Big vision is executed one small piece at a time. That process of execution begins with narrowing the focus to one concrete step first. You have to manage expectations for yourself and for your brain. You have to make sure you can identify the most important output that needs to be accomplished that supports that specific outcome or end goal. What is the one thing that you need to accomplish now? Name it. Write it down. Narrow your focus. The moment you take that action, you're going to move from being at the passive zone to moving up to the active zone. You'll move from passive curiosity to active interest. Now, you're going to exercise some active interest towards what you're working on and move that up the ladder as time goes on. You're not going to solve the problem in a single day. You're not going to be the solution to the larger issue in one moment. But your commitment to that singular target and giving the resources of your time, your cognitive energy, and your tangible resources to it deliberately helps ensure that you set the environment and the conditions for moving up that ladder, that cognitive capital ladder, to making it an enhancement. Okay? You're going to have to disrupt the pattern, not just manage it. And that means taking on one small chunk at a time. So that's the first thing you do. You're going to enter the realm of managing your environment from a position of influence and authority, not being managed by the environment from a position of passivity. This is your initial active engagement because the narrowing of the focus says, I'm in charge. Rather than trying to take on everything coming at me at once, I'm choosing the one thing that matters most that will take me towards refining or executing or delivering or experiencing that outcome that I want to achieve. Okay. 2, you want to leverage the inconvenient moment. So the first thing you want to do is narrow your target. The second thing you want to do is leverage the inconvenient moment. What do I mean by that? When you leverage what looks and feels like an inconvenient moment or condition to create the environment to execute on one objective, you are taking advantage of time. You are telling time, listen, the opportunity is tight, but I'm going to make the most of it in sometimes the strangest of conditions for the purpose of making sure I keep the progress towards that singular objective, that singular target in motion. This is not about perfect conditions. This is not about spending an inordinate amount of time making sure you have perfect conditions. This is about taking specific action on one core objective, that you listed. So, following the same example I gave you around recording this episode, I needed to find a place where I can huddle with myself and actually draft the outline and the script for this episode. Between work and family and handling some other details, time was scarce. I didn't have the time to make sure the house was completely quiet. Sometimes perfect conditions, quote unquote, may exist, but not always. As a result, sometimes the environment you need to create, you actually have to capture. So sometimes the environment you need is an environment you need to capture. It's not always the one that's given to you. And if you work, let's say, from home and virtually, you might need to do that more often than not. If you work in a busy office where there's always clients who are in need, or the phone is always ringing off the hook, or there's always a crisis, you're going to have to find a way to capture the opportunity. And sometimes the moment you need is the one you capture. And so one of the ways I actually captured some of that time was huddling with myself in the bathroom. I would take the brief time I went to go to the bathroom with an opportunity to think through what it is I needed to actually hammer down in this episode. You got to go anyway, right? That's your personal time. If you need to leverage it for an additional 5 or 10 minutes to get uh, your thoughts wrapped around a singular idea or process that you got to execute on, take advantage of it. It huddling in that bathroom for 10 to 15 minutes could save your life. You know, Ephesians 5:16 says, make the most of every opportunity because the days are evil. So even as you do a simple thing as going to the bathroom, your brain doesn't stop working. Ideas don't stop flowing. How can you maximize that time to huddle with yourself? Hold yourself hostage. Hold yourself hostage there for a few extra minutes to gather details that you need to help put fuel behind the singular specific target you're looking to make progress on. You've got to go to the bathroom anyway, so use the opportunity. Sometimes you can get more done in 15 minutes in a 15-minute uninterrupted huddle than you can get in 2-3 hours of time where you are constantly being used by the environment because of the demands of the environment, where you find yourself almost passively engaging around things that are priorities for everyone else, rather than you taking captive what you need to focus on for yourself. Okay. when when I was in the midst of an uncomfortable task on one occasion as a principal, addressing a team member's use of language and how he was describing and engaging with students, I needed to be thoughtful about what I was going to say. I remember it clearly. I got into the building in the morning. It was shortly before the start of the school day. Bus duty was just about to begin. I needed to head outside. I saw the messaging that was communicated in the building, and I physically removed it, but I also needed to think through what it is I needed to share with him. I needed to be thoughtful about what I was going to say, given the individual's temperament. I wanted to honor him, his humanity, but also make it clear about what our expectations were, how we were communicating our value about young people and students in our building. And it was during that break between bus duty and getting morning announcements done that I actually huddled in the bathroom for a few minutes to think about what it is I was going to say, how I was going to say it, so that I was messaging what I needed to communicate to him. I didn't think about the end result or the possible blowback of or response to what he was going to say. I didn't over obsess about that, about the what ifs. I did think clearly about what needed to be communicated, making sure I was being clear and intentional so he understood the rationale behind my actions and what I was holding him accountable to. And at the same time, honor his humanity. That was most important. We could work out the other details later. But I leveraged that time, that huddle in the bathroom by my office, to think through those details so I can be prepared for the conversation, so I could address that conversation and have it promptly before the day went any further. I needed to figure out an approach to navigate a conflict with this team member. And that opportunity and that time, given the speed in which life happened in our building, wasn't going to be given to me. I needed to take it. Okay. I hadn't figured out my talking points. I would not have been able to do it with the kind of back and forth that was happening in my office, typically on an everyday basis. And so I needed to make sure I created an environment, that I captured an environment that I needed to address a need that would serve him and actually our whole community better. So that's the second thing you want to do. You need to take those few minutes to pull your thoughts or your plan, what you're going to communicate together. You create capital out of that inconvenient moment. You take an inconvenient moment and you create capital out of it by finding a space to huddle to get it done. It is a small, but very tangible and resourceful way you can leverage your time to make a great impact. Okay. And so maybe you think about your own day and the chaos or the busyness or the needs that are on demand of you. Where can you make effective use of your time? It might be going to the bathroom, making an extended visit rather than the quick 2-3 minutes it might usually take the 15. Write out what you got to do. Write out your plan. Write out what needs to be communicated. Sketch out your strategy before you get in front of the person or that audience, so that you can go in front of them clear-headed and clarified about what it is you want to share. And it pushes you away from the temptation to be passive, from just allowing time to pass and you not address it because you didn't have perfect conditions to set yourself up for what it is you want to communicate. It kept you from rescheduling the conversation. It held you accountable to following through. And so these opportunities to maximize the inconvenient opportunity or the inconvenient time actually allows you to hold yourself accountable for following through and resisting passivity. You're no longer in the passive zone. You're now disrupting passivity, and you're disrupting the runaway pace of passive engagement by engaging in a brief planning huddle in the bathroom, if need be. For you, it might be a coat closet. Yeah, I had another space in the building where I would actually leverage a small room that was between the entrance to the cafeteria and the kitchen of the cafeteria. It was by a telephone that we often received calls on. And when I had something I needed to address or plan for or think through, I would leverage that small little closet to begin to map out what it is I needed to say or respond to an inquiry, an email with some very specific actions that needed to take place, because that was the moment. That was the place I could take captive, the inconvenient moment I could take captive and leverage it for my benefit to make things happen. So, pressing against passivity means setting a clear, specific target, and two, leveraging the inconvenient moment and leveraging it as a source of capital to begin to map out how you're going to execute on it. Here's the third thing you want to do. You want to take the risk to act even in the midst of uncertainty. There's a parable found in Matthew 25. It's Matthew 25, 14 through 30. It is the parable of the talents. And in that parable, it describes how one servant was given 5 talents and invested it. Another was given a few talents and invested in it. Then it got to the individual that had the 1 talent. And that servant with the 1 talent didn't invest in it because he was afraid of the master's reaction to him if he lost the talent, or if he didn't gain any interest in the talent as a result of a failed investment. You are going to have to take the risk and for action in uncertain times. I wasn't sure how the individual I needed to have that hard conversation with was going to take what I was going to say. That wasn't my problem either. What was most important is that I was clear about what needed to be communicated, that I was intentional about honoring his humanity in the process, but whether he was able to handle what I said or not was not my primary concern. Because had I waited for being concerned about how he was going to handle it, I probably would have waited a lot longer. And the tolerance, or the message that I tolerated what was being displayed and communicated by what he presented and posted in the building, would have been seen as something that was okay. And that could have been detrimental to other adults and to the young people in our building. So the issue for the parable in the man with the 1 talent was that his fear was a result of him not wanting to take any risk. The fact is, he did not even attempt to risk the use of his talent that he was given. Now, this wasn't a talent that he had saved up for. It was a talent given to him. And he remained at the passive level by refusing to do anything with it. He was resolved to let life happen to him instead of taking the risk to see what he could do and how he could expand that talent, or what he could expand it to become, by investing his time, his cognitive capacity, and even other tangible resources to see that 1 talent grow. The servant with the 1 talent didn't lack opportunity. He didn't lack opportunity. He lacked initiative. The issue for that servant of the 1 talent was that it wasn't that he lacked opportunity, he lacked initiative. He allowed fear of the outcome to keep him from executing on what he already had. Passivity is not just inactivity. It is the refusal to risk engagement. Okay? Passivity is not just inactivity. It is the refusal to risk engagement. Directed engagement, which is found close to the highest level on the cognitive capital ladder, is when you take what you've created or initiated and you begin to exercise its usefulness. It's when you give talking points you've written the audience it needs for it to be heard. It's when you take the $10, not to turn it into a million tomorrow, but to give it the opportunity to gain some compound interest that makes it more than it was yesterday, or more than it would have grown into had you just buried it in your drawer. Directed engagement is when you test out what you planned in that huddle to see how and if it works, and whether or not you need to refine it because it is working, or abandon it because it doesn't have a future, because it's not working. All right. So those are your 3 steps. You need to take your time, your cognitive capacity, and your tangible resources and put it in motion. You don't want to wait for certainty. You don't want to wait for perfect conditions. You don't want to wait till you feel ready, because the longer you wait, the more you reinforce passive engagement. The moment you act, especially when the outcome is unclear, you break passivity at its root. Okay. And so those are the 3 steps for getting past passive. You want to identify that clear, specific target. So be clear about that one specific target. You want to leverage inconvenient moments. You want to captivate, you want to hold captive inconvenient moments and see how you can expand it to make something meaningful out of it, to get critical things connected to that one specific target you want to see make progress. And thirdly, you want to make sure that you are an individual who takes risks and acts, even when the outcome might be uncertain. All right. You want to do those 3 things. When you do that, you are disrupting the pattern, you're creating conditions, and you're executing, you're investing in the inconvenience. So those are the 3 things you can do to get past passive. Okay, so that's it for today. It was great spending time with you. I'm inviting you to like and subscribe to the Take Care and Live podcast here on YouTube or on any streaming service. You can also check out my book, The Momentum List, which is available from online booksellers anywhere. And the importance of interest versus enhancements when it comes to momentum is if you're clear about what it is you want to see enhanced in your life, you're more likely to cultivate an environment that allows you to gain momentum towards it. And so my book will help you navigate that world and that concept and that reality even more. You can connect with me through LinkedIn and Instagram. You can also visit my website, takecareandlive.com, where I offer some valuable resources for you that build upon what we share in each and every episode. In the meantime, I want you to do what I encourage everyone to do each and every day, and that's to take care and live.